So I loved my mission so much. I have a lot of funny stories that happened, whether it was with companions or just tracking memories or what it might be. Uh, yeah. Okay, so I actually just told this story the other day. So on Thanksgiving, on your mission, it's a super fun day. You just spend the whole week helping people bake and like get ready for their Thanksgiving and in between your other teaching appointments. But on Thanksgiving, a lot of members love to have you over. A lot of people love to have you over and the people you're working with. It's a super sweet experience. And so my first Thanksgiving on the mission, I was with my follow-up trainer, and she was a goober. I love her to pieces. But we we ended up not having a whole we had a lot of stuff to do that day, and so we didn't really have like a dinner. And so finally, it was getting later in the night, and I was like, "Sister, I am so hungry. Like, we have to go home and eat something. Like, we can't go all day without eating." So we went home and we had a chicken pot pie with our landlady, who I think she gave us some leftover stuffing, and that was our dinner. And it was super funny. We had a good time with it. But the lady we lived with, she asked us if we'd let her dog and her son's dog out when we got home because they were going to be out for the night. And so we were like, sure, no problem. So we come home at night, and I'm putting all my stuff down, and my companion goes to let the dogs out the back door, and they won't go out. And she's like, sister, I think they go out the front. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, no, yeah, they do. Come on. So I'm like, okay. So we go out the front door, and off they go running. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock at night, and it's Thanksgiving, and we have to chase these dogs down the street, okay? So we're running as fast as we can, and this one dog did not like us. But finally, we catch the dogs, and we're trying to get back in before curfew. So we get the dogs, and we walk them back to the house, and the door had locked behind us, and our keys were inside. And so luckily we had our cell phone, and we had our coats, and that was it. And so we're calling the person that we live with, and nothing's happening. And so we're calling all of these members, and everybody's celebrating Thanksgiving, so nobody had their phones. And so we're sitting outside on the driveway at after 9 o'clock at night with these two dogs on Thanksgiving, and we called some other missionaries, and they were sending the sister training leader and her companion to come and help us out. And then in the meantime, while they were coming, the other dog ran off again, and it was the dog her son's dog. And so we take off running after it, and this dog was not having any of it and kept growling at us, and it was a little speedier than we were, and so we lost the dog. And so we're like, this isn't funny anymore. And so we called another member who luckily answered her phone, and she was kind enough to end her plans for the evening to come and help us out. And so she came and picked us up while we searched for the dog. And then the sisters came and helped us get back into the house. But that's how we spent my first Thanksgiving on the mission, was chasing dogs down after curfew. We finally got in at about 10 that night in the cold. So that was funny. Let's see, another story. So when I was in Cottonwood Heights, we had to get our car repaired. Somebody had hit it, and so there's some scratches, and so they decided to get the car repaired. And so we go and we drop our car off, and the mission office elder comes to pick us up from the car place, and he's like, sisters, I have another car for you, don't worry about it. And we're like, oh, okay, sweet. And then while we're in the car with him, somebody calls him, and they're like, yeah, we just took the extra car because we needed it. And so he's like, well, sorry, sisters, you're going to have to walk. And we're like, that's okay. That's what we thought in the first place. So by this time, it's my fourth transfer. And so I was with a missionary who was out just one transfer less than me. And she had just come from a walking area, so she was gung-ho about walking. And I had been spoiled in a car the entire time, so I was less than excited. But yeah, so we were walking around, and we were doing our thing, and Up in Cottonwood Heights, it's very hilly. There's huge hills. And so one night we went to our appointment, and at the end of the appointment, the people that we went to the appointment with, they'd always offer us a ride. And we had another appointment right at 7. And so we were like, okay, like they're going to give us a ride, like not a big deal, like we'll make it to the other appointment in time. And that was the one time that they didn't offer us a ride. And so we're like, ah. So we're like hurrying as fast as we can, walking as fast as we can down Wasatch Boulevard at 7 o'clock at night in the winter. And we are going, and there's 2 ways to get to this house we were going to. One's to go up this giant hill, and the other one, it's a little bit less of a hill. So I call out to my companion, I'm like, hey, like if we keep going straight, we don't have to go up this big hill, and we can go up a different one. And she didn't hear me, which I think was the Lord, so we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so she didn't hear me, and she starts going up this giant hill, and I'm like, okay. So we start going up this hill, and it felt like it was straight up like this. And so we finally get to the top, and we're catching our breath, and our appointment texts us, and they cancel. So we walked up this big hill for nothing. And so we sat there in the snow on a snowbank. We laid there as we caught our breath, and we're like, okay, now where are we going to go? Because we had a list that we were going to go work through, but it was in the car, which is at the shop. So that wasn't very well thought out on our part. Yeah, so we were like, okay, what are we going to do? And so my companion, she says, well, let's knock doors. And I'm like, okay, where do we start? And she goes, that one, and just points at a random door. And so we go, and we walk up to this door, and we knock on it. And there's a big dog barking, and so we're like, oh, scary dog. But this man answers the door, and he like looks at us, and he kind of chuckles, and he's like, you know, I've lived here for 2 years, and I've been waiting for you to show up. And after we picked our jaws back up off the floor, we went inside, and we were able to teach him and his wife parts of the restoration. And it was awesome how I remember we left that day, and we were like, wow, like we were totally led by Heavenly Father. It was like Nephi, led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which we would do. Is that, you know, all these things happen, is that, you know, it just so happened that somebody came and took that car, so we couldn't drive around that day. And it just so happened that those people didn't offer to give us a ride that night, and that our appointment ended up canceling, and that my companion, you know, that we left that list in the car, but that my companion said, let's start with that house. And they said that we've been waiting for 2 years for sisters or for missionaries to show up. And so that was a really touching moment for me, especially at the beginning of my mission and serving where I was it was an amazing experience. Okay, so another kind of funny story. So there was one time I was with my companion, and we were teaching this sweet little family in our area, and they were so funny. I remember when I first got to the area, she's like, "We got to go introduce you to these people. You got to see this family. Like they're the greatest." And so we went over there, and it was a super unique situation. And so it was the mom and her son, and her oldest son was on his mission, and his younger brother wasn't baptized. And so that's what we were there for, is we were trying to see if he was ready. And so the brother that was on his mission got to Skype in to the lessons. And so it'd be me and my companion, and the computer with the elder and his companion, and then our investigator and his mom. And almost every week, we'd call the other missionaries and be like, how can we help your brother? Like, we are not sure what to do. Because every time, like, he'd accept everything we were saying, and then we'd invite him to be baptized, and he'd be like, no. And he'd never really give us a reason why. And we were like, dude, like, at least tell us why. And so one time we called his brother, and we had like prepared like this whole big lesson about like helping him see, like we'd like been praying over his concerns, like we had all these scriptures and all of these things to like tie back into his life. And so we were all so ready for this lesson. And so we go in there and we are talking to him, and we start the lesson, And before we go anywhere, we wanted to start it off by inviting him to be baptized again. And then, once he told us no, we'd explain to him about that, and, we'd try to help him work through his concerns. So we said, hey, would you be willing to follow the example of Jesus Christ and be baptized? And he says, yeah. And me and my companion, we were like, what? We didn't know what to say after that. And he was laughing at us because all of us were like, what? Because he had just, somehow the Spirit had touched his heart so that he was ready to be baptized. And so that was kind of a fun experience just because nobody was expecting it, and he threw us all off our guard. We had to prepare this whole lesson, and he didn't need it anymore. Another story, which was really cool to see how it came about. I was with my companion, and we had decided to be extra obedient this one week to try to help out our area a little more. So we got up and we were like working out super hard, for the entire 30 minutes. And we were just going around through our day. And then finally it was Sunday, and we were going through Sunday. And we got a call. We had a bunch of care center branches. So we got a call from one of the branch presidents. And he's like, hey, I have someone who wants to get baptized. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, like here's the name and like the room number. Like, go ahead and check it out. So we're like, okay. So we go, and that's where we met George and Steve. I love George and Steve so much. So they were in the care center, and George was just this cutest little old guy in the world. He was 70, and you never would have guessed it. But he was so cute. And Steve had been George's friend. They lived across the hall from each other in the care center. And Steve had slowly been starting to teach George about the gospel to the point where George decided he wanted to be baptized before we had even met him. So we came in and we were able to put him on date for baptism that same day. And 3 weeks later he was baptized. But it was definitely not without opposition. It was tricky getting that to happen. So George is in a wheelchair, and he was so excited about being baptized, he really didn't care about any of the other things. So we had to figure out how to get him transported to the stake center, and then how to get him into the font and back out of the font with a wheelchair. But we were able to figure it all out. But I think one of the coolest moments on my mission, baptisms are probably one of the best moments on your mission. Your first baptism is amazing, just watching it happen. You just feel the Spirit so strongly. But definitely during George's baptism, and Steve got to be a part of it as well. But because George was in the wheelchair, we ended up having to have, I think, 5 or 6 people help carry George into the font and to lift him back up out of the water and take him out of the font, which was awesome because you got to look into the waters and see 6 people dressed in white. And that, I think, was probably one of my favorite times on my missions. I love George so much. He was just so excited about the gospel, and everything that we taught him, he was just so ready for. And so I think that's another really cool thing that happens is you see the people that Heavenly Father has prepared, and right for those perfect times. But jumping back to the whole me and my companion try to be extra obedient, is after we put George on date, we were like, it's because we worked out for the whole 30 minutes, like, woohoo, like, so it was funny.